How are we doing, everybody? And welcome to another episode of the Chop Won't Stop podcast, a Braves podcast for Braves fans. We're feeling pretty good going into the All-Star break. We hope you all are too. We got Nick with us. Per usual, she is down in the Atlanta, Georgia area once again for this episode. Nick, how are you doing?
I'm feeling great. Would feel better after a win today, but 2.5 games at the All-Star break is feeling a lot better than the 10.5 we were at the start of June.
Yeah, it's way better. I mean, obviously, it sucks that the Cubs couldn't capitalize in literally about every extra inning game that they played, other than as we're recording this on Sunday, where they scored 2 runs in the eighth to take the lead, but we'll take it. So, kind of, quick lay of the land. Here in just a second, we're going to have Nick start us off the good, bad, and ugly of the first half. This entire episode is going to be and contribute of the first half of the season instead of this past week. And then from there, we'll talk about our first half season awards, kind of go into if we have a hot take or not. And then next one, kind of introduce y'all to our 20th overall pick in this 2022 MLB draft. So, Nick, go ahead and give it away with your good, bad, and ugly of the first half.
Yeah, so obviously, similarities from last year and this year, we obviously had a slow start and we really turned it on. And I really don't think we're at our peak right now. I mean, you see the potential in this team when we went 40 or whatever it was, 32-10, I think, over the past month and a half. So you've really seen the potential that this team can do. And that's been my good so far. I mean, you saw the run we're on. You can see that we can click on all cylinders, whether it be starting pitching, bullpen, and hitters. And you can see what happens when all of them are on at the same time. You go on a 14, 15 game win streak, whatever we just did. So that's my good. As far as my bad is, the inconsistencies in all facets of the game where starting pitching might not be its best. The bullpen might, be shaky no matter who you bring in, or the hitters just 1 through 9, just some nights will just not be there whatsoever. And it's not like they're facing ace caliber stuff. They're just struggling against some random dude who just hasn't really made a name for himself and they just can't seem to hit the ball. So that's my bad. And then my ugly is just, you see it today. You saw it against the Mets, not being able to finish off series finales. I feel like that's been a trend throughout the entire season where we just series finales, we're just for some reason not able to finish them off. And it's quite annoying when we can win 2 games or split the first 2 games and then we just throw Joe Smo out there to play on that. That's how we play on the series finale. We've got to capitalize and win the series every single time. We've got to keep winning series. We can't I know we went 3 out of 4 and I know that it's hard to sweep a 4-game set, but I mean, there's no reason, especially with Strider on the mound, that we shouldn't have won today's game going into the All-Star break and feeling good about ourselves and then being a game and a half going into the second half. I mean, it's just kind of it's a momentum shifter starting the second half now with the Angels coming in.
For sure. I mean, for the most part, I would say myself and a lot of other people agree with you. For my good, bad, and ugly, the good, I would say is the latter part of this first half. So the second half of the first half, if you look at all of our rankings, including bullpen, even starting pitching with Charlie turning around and getting a little bit better, and Strider being added to that, and as well as some of our hitters, we have a lot of guys. And, our bullpen, I believe, is first in majority of the categories, especially with ERA, strikes per 9 or Ks per 9. And then obviously our starting pitching first in a lot of things. You're looking at guys like Strider, Freed, and Wright, who's really been the anchor, that 1, 2, 3, with Morton improving and Ian improving as well. And then obviously Austin Riley's been on a tear. Dansby's on a tear. Matt Olson has kind of found himself again, especially with runners in scoring positions, which is something that we've been lacking. So to me, that's definitely the good. It's just seeing that consistency with some of our players in terms of that. Everybody's got downfall here and there, but the overall of the second half of the first half has been tremendous. My bad, I would say, is probably in terms of the bad, just thinking of it, is just some with Ian and Charlie. Obviously, don't like to pick on them too much, but they've been struggling a bit. I know it's something Nick and I talked about. Nick pretty much just, was giving me crap about it. Is I broke their leg, come back in a training camp, and then they're literally like trying to function again. But in the end, it's obviously we're hoping to have a full 5-man rotation that we feel comfortable going out there. But there's still some worry with Ian and Charlie in terms of things. And Charlie got hot. It's kind of been hit around lately. And then Ian was getting beat up bad. It's kind of had some back-to-back good starts, but to me, that's still my bad. You really want at least 4 solid quality starts out of the 5. And I feel like we've been getting 3 for the most part. And then my ugly is just runners in scoring position. I mean, I feel like we went through this last year whenever we were still, trying to get our head above the 500 mark. And we saw it today, Sunday, as we record, bases loaded in the 7th inning. Even with 2 outs, there's, you almost got to have that instinct where, I'm going to draw that walk or I'm going to get the base hit to get somebody across. Now, granted, Olsen got screwed heavily, but, those are just one of those things that you can't put almost strikes into ump's hands, which we've seen a lot this year around the strike zone. But I feel like this one's been really ugly. And, I think our run differential could be way higher. I think it could have led to another 3 or 4 games in terms of wins this year if we were able to kind of capitalize on that. So to me, that's my good, bad, and ugly. But in the end, I feel way more comfortable than where we were last year in terms of this team's playing great. They're still not playing to their full potential. You're missing Ozzy. You're missing, honestly, probably another solid starter. And there's just, Eddie still hasn't reached his peak yet. Duvall's still struggling, in my opinion. And Azuna's struggling really bad, too. So I think there's still a lot more to, be untapped in the second half where I think we just kind of take off come August.
Yeah, and I'd agree. I don't know if we see Ozuna kind of, maybe a break during the All-Star break and then, being able to refocus and solely focus on hitting. Maybe you see him go on a little bit of a tear. And, same thing with Duvall and Eddie Rosario being able to get this break and kind of reset. Duvall's still probably gassed. This team had played several games in a row without an off day. So these next 2, 3, 4 days of being able to relax for the most part. We've got 6 that are going to the All-Star game, but most of the team being able to relax is really going to help them. And our opponent and the Angels have really struggled the past really 2 months. So we open the second half with a good opponent in terms of who we have to face and how you can line the rotation up with however you want to line it up, whether it be Fried, Strider, right, or Fried, right, Strider is really how I see it going, unless you kind of want to take a step back on Strider's innings with how he's thrown. But for the most part, that's what I see. And so hopefully a break and then our first series really kind of gets it going in the second half.
Yeah, I don't want to dive too much deep into that series since we're doing a lot of this first half, but what's really going to set the tone is how they go after Shohei, because he's already been named the starter for Friday, game 1 of the series. And if they put up 2 or 3 runs against Shohei, then to me, that's setting the tone for the second half, and they're just going to literally run wild, in my opinion. But they got to become mentally prepared because they're facing one of the best pitchers that they will see. And I don't think really outside of maybe Olsen and maybe a few stragglers, I don't think anybody's really seen like prime Shohei yet.
No, just Olsen. You're right, just Olsen.
So, but speaking of the first half, we're going to do our midseason awards. We've done this in the past. Kind of what we do is we're going to talk about our MVP, Cy Young, Rookie of the Year, most improved in terms of past year, this year, and then the surprise player who surprised us this year in terms of just coming out of the woodwork and just being able to do that. So I will kind of kick us off. Obviously, this is no surprise. Our title is named after it, but Austin Riley's MVP of this team. He was the glue that held us together last year in terms of timely hits, being the man whenever Acuna went down. And he has continued it this year without Freddie. He has been a very consistent bat. He went from being an all fastball hitter coming up in 2019 to where if you threw a slider, he wasn't going to touch it. Now he is finding where he's able to level that out. If you're hanging a slider, he is banging it. If he catches you sleeping with the fastball, he's going to bang it. So with 27 homers right now is the second most In terms of most home runs by a Brave at the All-Star break, he's tied with like Hank Aaron, Chipper Jones, Andre, like all great company. Number one, I think, is the Big Cat in Galarraga. So it's, to me, that is proving that Austin Riley is going to kind of be this next generational third baseman. He won't be Chipper Jones by any means. We would love him to, but I think he is somebody that's going to be here to stay. So he's my MVP. My second young is Max Fried. Max kind of got roughed up at the beginning of the season a little bit, which I mean, it's normal. He got roughed up last year too. And then he went on I think it was a 9 straight start tear where he didn't lose, lost the game before last, and now he's a 10 winner, joining Kyle Wright with 11 wins. The first time they've done that in quite a while, having two 10 plus K guys. In 2011, I think I saw it was like Jair Jurgens and Tommy Hanson. And then my rookie of the year, I want to go with Spencer Strider because how great he was coming out of the bullpen and being very timely, and what he has done in that starting rotation, really becoming that third anchor with Kyle Wright and Max Fried. Michael Harris will be the entire year. Like at the end of the year, I think he'll win Rookie of the Year of the NL. But for the first half, Spencer Strider, I mean, Michael Harris, the second has literally taken everybody by storm. But in terms of just the first half, I'm personally going to go Spencer Strider. And then my most improved, I think in terms of his consistency, it's Dansby Swanson. Yes, he had 27 home runs last year, just shy of the 30. But he was very up and down, hot and cold last year. And he started off cold this year, but he has been a very consistent 280, 290 guy in terms of doing that. So I think seeing that consistency is what we wanted as Braves fans. Obviously, his glove's always been there. But as a consistent hitter, if he's 275 above, he's worth every penny that the Braves may offer him an extension. But if his bat wasn't there, then obviously it'd be a little weary. So to me, just seeing that overall consistency in a 2-hole, which is where he generally struggled in the past last year. Once he got bumped down to 8-9s where he got comfortable, that's my most improved. And my most surprised player is Dylan Lee. I think whenever you're, kind of your first appearance is in game 3 of the World Series and you're told to start, that will put some hair on your chest, especially getting smacked around right away. But he has come out of the bullpen, been very, very consistent with 22 innings. I think he's got 1.5 ERA. He is very limited on his walks. He lets his defense play. So to me, he's been a great surprise because with seeing Will Smith struggle, that's another lefty arm with Matzik and Minter that we can come to rely on.
Yeah, and I'd agree pretty much spot on. Dylan Lee has been quite the surprise. My MVP, I'm gonna change it up. I don't want to have the same players as you, so I'll kind of change it up who I feel like honestly could win those awards though. You mentioned Dansby sliding into that 2-hole. He obviously struggled heavily to begin the season, but he turned it on mid-May, and then come late May, the team just started rolling off those wins, and he's been a huge part of it. He leads the team in average. He's got 15 home runs, I think 53 or 54 RBIs. Slugging, I think between 8 and 900, are on base plus slugging. He's 8 to 900. So he's done really well for the team. I think his average has kind of dropped off this past week, but he's had some really hard hit balls that were outs, especially a couple against New York where could have gone out had they not been the kind of weather nights that they were. And for Cy Young, I mean, really, Max Fried has done a great job. He's obviously been the ace of the staff, but for me, Kyle Wright, without him and his 11 wins this season, who knows where this team would be. I mean, he's really stepped up big for this team. Sub-3 ERA. He's just been huge for this team and helping us get back on track. He's really been a stopper, I guess, for that first part of the season where we were struggling. You look to Kyle Wright as that guy who, like, if we both him and Max Fried, if we were on a losing streak, those were the two pitchers that are not a losing streak, obviously, because we haven't had one of those in the first half. But if we lost a game, I felt comfortable with Fried or Wright coming in and really stopping it from making it 2 or 3 in a row to kind of keep us around that 500 mark until we hit our stretch. And rookie of the year, obviously, it's for me, it's got to be Michael Harris II. I mean, Spencer Strider's been great, but really when he came up, it gave this team new life. not just offensively, but defensively. He's saved, I feel like, a ton of runs so far this season, and just a month and a half, 2 months that he's been up. So, I mean, he was a spark defensively, and he's certainly been a spark offensively in that 9 hole. He's provided power, as you can see, 8 home runs, I think, this season. And he has that speed. I think he stole 3 bases in one game this series. So, I mean, he's performing at all levels of play right now, whether it be in the field, at the plate, or on the base paths. And my most improved player, got to be William Contreras. I mean, he has stepped up big for us. He's filled right in. He's been able to play so well that we end up platooning him and Travis d'Arnaud behind the plate, which I think makes us even better, because now our catchers get, another extra day of rest, and we really don't lose anything productivity wise. I mean, both of them have just been amazing. Obviously, they're both all-stars. So for me, most improved, William Contreras, it kind of eases the pain of seeing Shea Langeliers win Futures Game MVP this week. So he's definitely got to be my most improved, considering where we were at last year with him, having to send him down between AAA and the majors whenever maybe we need him for a spot start, because we were struggling at catcher last year when d'Arnaud went down. And then my surprise player has been Spencer Strider for me, because I mean, like, I think came in for maybe an inning or two last season, so you really just get a taste of him, and then this year has just been lights out in almost every situation you've put him in. He's kind of had he had a rough outing against Arizona and San Francisco, and then against the Nationals today, but he's been so dominant every other outing. I mean, that his first start against the Diamondbacks honestly should have been a win. We had a couple miscues, I think, his first couple innings pitching, that really cost him going deeper into that ball game, especially with it being his first start. And then, Giants game, it was probably kind of a taste of his first really, really good competition, because we had gone in that stretch of below 500 teams. But, I mean, he was terrific against the Dodgers. He's really shown that he can hold his own against really good teams. And so he's been the surprise for me this season so far.
I think something that Braves fans needed to transition into this new season was something to rally behind, like the Jock Pearls. And you see every Strider Day, mustaches all over the ballpark. Even the Braves changed their Twitter photo and Instagram photo, Facebook photo with the mustache. Like, I think that's something that's been a great transition from last year to this year. Is like, we need something to rally behind, even if it's something as small as an item that fans wear. And I guarantee you, whenever, I think it was the first time they were at Nationals ballpark, people in mustaches, all 5 of the National fans that were there were probably like, what's going on? But I mean, kind of like that's something we need, and something too to add on with Kyle Wright. Dude should honestly be a 12-game winner if it wasn't for that rain delay and getting cut short an inning. And I mean, we could say he's been a surprise and he's been most improved. But obviously, since 2018, 2019, this is kind of the Kyle Wright we had been hoping for, that really resembled the Vanderbilt boy.
Yeah.
Nick, let me ask you this before we go into hot takes, because obviously this is probably a first half question that many analysts, baseball analysts, Braves personnel, MLB network are going to be talking about. Has Matt Olson, in your eyes, lived up to what he should be in terms of being I wouldn't say replacing Freddie, but being the next person after Freddie?
There have been signs of it. I didn't watch Matt Olson enough in Oakland to know what he was, but the 279, I think, hitter he was last season with 39 home runs and 100 and some RBI, that's kind of what I was expecting. I was expecting him to be a little more consistent, and we've seen those slumps that he can get in where he's 1 for 30 something, and I'm just like, oh goodness, that's not what, like, Freddie did not do that. But I mean, obviously, like you said, he can't really replace Freddie, but he's been a nice cornerstone, especially with all the doubles and then now home runs. I mean, he's hit several home runs this week alone. If he can maybe spread it out to where he's not slumping so much and still producing like he does in bunches at occasions, then he very well, has done what I'd expect him to do. And I mean, when you see the flashes of just power and productivity on a week, it's fun to see, and I very well would say he's lived up to the hype. Just maybe put it together a little bit more, spread out those slumps and tears.
I think the one thing that surprised me is like how many doubles we're seeing, considering if you think about it, he probably could have had another 8 homers just by a matter of feet. The one thing that I've kind of been disappointed in is obviously here, his glove's just as good as Freeman. I want to say it was like in late May, early June. He was having trouble scooping. There were some that literally would just hit his glove and pop out. So to me, that's kind of where I was a little upset. But in terms of the grand scheme of things, I would say we didn't really take too much of a step backwards in terms of the productivity from a first baseman. Obviously, Freddie is batting over 300, I think, and he is second in the league in hits behind Josh Bell, considering Josh Bell literally dang near went like 1,000 this week against the Braves. The dude was 2-3 hits a piece. But I mean, in terms of extra base hits, I think homers, Matt Olson's definitely beating him in that aspect. And to both of them, 3, 2, 1, and into both of them, it's it's a culture difference to them. They have swapped time zones. They have swapped fan bases that they are not really used to playing in front of. Obviously, both have given them grace and shown them a lot of support, but it still takes a lot of adjustment. Freddie has seen a majority of those pitchers. Matt Olson hasn't, going from AL to NL. So I think really the second to really compare if Matt Olson has lived up to Freddie's expectations and Freddie expectations of going from a Brave to a Dodger, I don't think it can be talked about until the end of next year, 2 full years. But I would say overall, I'm happy. I'm excited when Matt Olson comes up. I feel like we didn't, it's better than us picking up some random first baseman because Anthopoulos was sitting there and allowed Freddie's agent to send him to LA, and then us losing Olson to somebody else. So in the end, I would say I'm happy with what we were able to get out of him. And I think next year he'll start playing like that $20 million player that we have.
Yeah. And you can also should take away a strikeout from his total this season and put it towards a walk after today. And I'm sure there are probably a couple other at bats where he's had the same misfortune, but that called strike 3 on Sunday's game was just absolutely atrocious. And I mean, the Twitter timeline, I counted, 12 minutes worth of tweets, and I think 52 out of 56 were about that called strike 3 call. So obviously Braves country was thinking the same thing when that happened. So that was a tough one to watch. But yeah, Matt Olson's been pretty good for us this season, and a huge part of why we've done what we've done so far, obviously. And I would love to see him make history this year with the amount of extra base hits that he's piling up.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of with the trade deadline, Nick, I wonder if you have any hot takes for this episode.
Not really with the trade deadline. I don't see what we do. I know that we're going to have Kirby Yates come back. I know he started his rehabilitation assignment on Sunday, had a perfect inning with 2 strikeouts with the FCL Braves. So that's another reliever we get back. So I don't know if we'd go for another reliever at the trade deadline, because obviously I don't think we'd get him back until after the trade deadline, because I think he has to have a 30-day rehabilitation assignment. And as far as the bats go, I mean, if Eddie can prove that he's going to be a consistent hitter, and then Duvall can show that he can kind of platoon with Eddie when there's left-handed sticks, and then Robinson Cano continues to hit, I really don't know who we go after at the trade deadline, whether it be a starter or what. So as far as that, no. My hot take, though, might be, some people might be kind of concerned about how we play against the Mets, but my hot take is that we win the season series in the second half over them pretty handily. I think that we've got them beat in all facets of the game. They might have us on DeGrom and Scherzer if DeGrom ever comes back healthy. But at other, like, I mean, I see us hit the ball and then their punch and Judy hits that they have. It just upsets me every single time they score a run, because it's a, some language I want to say on here that I shouldn't.
And we do not have the explicit E next to our podcast. So kind of, I would say I think if we know that something good is not going with Ozzy's recovery, that will come out at the trade deadline. If we trade for another, utility infielder that can probably play majority of the day, Arcia probably gets, option down or DFA'd, and then Cano stays up. Also, I did see something where Noah Syndergaard, if he is out on the trade block, Cardinals are first, Braves are second. Once again, with Soroka kind of getting that pushback in terms of getting hit on the knee, that could be a possibility. Noah Syndergaard has been fairly successful, obviously not too much, but one of those things, new place could bring new life.
I think he'd also like to get a couple shots at the Mets as well.
Yeah. And, that kind of performance drives, hopefully, drives W's. But with Juan Soto saying no to his 15-year, $440 million extension, I don't think the Nats are able to trade him, just for the main fact of somebody's going to have to give up their entire farm. Like we thought we gave up a lot with Shea and Pache and a pitcher, like times that by times 4. He's just too valuable, especially having him for a little bit. I think the only way that somebody's going to be able to get him away is if they trade dang near their farm and they're willing to take on Strasburg's contract of $35 million a year through 2026. So to me, I don't think Juan Soto gets traded. I think he's kind of stuck there. I don't know if the Mets will ever go up and touch that 500 mil that he's looking for in that 15 years, which would be, I think, only like 32 million or something like that, 32, 33 million a year. But I don't think he gets traded. I think they're kind of stuck sitting there, trying to figure crap out until they can maybe get a compensation draft pick out of them.
Yeah, I would 100% agree. The thing I hate is just how much people are willing to pay one player. Like, sure, Mike Trout deserves it because he's the best player, but you can't build a team around a guy who's making $400 and some million a year. Same thing with Bryce Harper. I mean, you see the Phillies trying to buy all their bats, and look where they're at right now. Like, it's just not something that you can do financially and continue to win. So I'll leave it at that.
But real quick, the Rays are grade A at what to do. Low market team. They find the scrappiest players who are willing to win. I mean, Brett Phillips, Randy Arozarena, because same thing for Mike Trout. They put a lot of money in him. They put a lot of money into technically Albert Pujols, Anthony Rendon, and then, Justin Upton, and just not much is happening. Now you're saying guys like Mike Trout and Shohei should deserve better, but they have all their money wrapped up in 5 people at one point. So yeah, it's definitely, it's that's the way it is though. I mean, you look at across the NBA, all these supermax contracts, NFL, all these quarterbacks getting huge deals, which is granted. But yeah, that's, to me, in the end, I think that Juan Soto is only going to end up. I think the Nats are going to get a draft pick out of Juan Soto. But speaking of draft, as we're recording, this draft's currently going on, and we currently have our 20th overall pick. And Nick kind of has a little information about him.
Yeah, kid's an absolute stud out of Illinois. I've heard that he could have been a top 5 round draft pick as a hitter, but we've taken him as a pitcher, I believe. Kid has 4 no-hitters and 2 perfect games this year, a .12 ERA on the season with 137 strikeouts and 58 in the 3rd innings. Hit near 550 with 18 home runs and 70 plus RBIs. So, I mean, like, kid can rake and kid can pitch. He's a Notre Dame commit, but who wouldn't want to come play for the Braves? I mean, come on. I mean, story franchise. So we'll hopefully get him up. I know that I was telling you about, our drafting, our vice president of like draft development or whatever, who's hit on Michael Harris II and Spencer Strider the past couple of years. So I'm hoping this is one of his picks where we might see him in 2 or 3 years. Kid is a 21-year-old. He sits around 92 to 94. And then I've also got his career numbers. He had a 0.12 ERA this season, but overall in his high school career, 0.54, 130 RBIs and 30 home runs as a high school player. That's very, very good. And another thing to note, he threw one of his no-hitters against the team that won the state championship. You want to take a guess how many strikeouts he had in that game?
19.
He had 18. 18.
So close.
If that
I actually had no idea.
Yeah, but he's just been he's an unbelievable player, and hopefully, he translates that into Major League Baseball. So,
and something I see in 3 years, Anthopoulos being the GOAT that he is, and us already following this trend once in 3 years, I see our outfield being Drew Jones, Michael Harris II, and Ronald Acuna Jr. Mark it down. That is, I wouldn't say that's a hot take, because the Diamondbacks are smart. They would not do such a thing, especially if Drew Jones is currently living up to his hype. But people have been stupid before, and Anthopoulos has been known to take the rug out underneath people in terms of trades.
It wouldn't be the first time the Diamondbacks have traded their first round pick to the Braves. They did that with Dansby Swanson.
We would welcome any repeats. But Nick, I mean, it's the All-Star break. Obviously, we're going to be able to kick back and relax tonight as this episode releases on Monday. We got Acuna facing Pete Alonso in the first round. I would love for Acuna just to literally shove it in his face to show what we're going to be doing in the second half. Obviously, we have 6 represented in the All-Star game on Tuesday. Max Fried not pitching, being inactive. So, that would technically be like 3 days rest for him if he's pitching. Makes you think he's probably starting Friday against Shohei. But Dansby's there. Riley finally got it, which he should have been there all along. Darney is going to be there as well. So pretty pumped in terms of everybody being there and being able to represent Atlanta. I'm pumped just to watch the home run derby. But it's still going to be a good week. Shohei pitching on Friday. I envy anybody who's able to be down there for Friday, because literally every number he's putting up matches up to Babe Ruth right now. So this is like a once in a century talent that Braves fans get to watch. I mean, obviously Mike Trout being there too. So it's going to be a good week. Nick, I'm pumped. I know you're pumped. And we look forward to seeing everybody next week. And hopefully we're able to talk about how we were able to sweep the Angels and get geared up for the rest of the season. Appreciate y'all hopping on. Please like, subscribe, share, talk to your friends about it, whether they're a Braves fan or they're a pathetic Mets fan who need a conversion to a more stable lifestyle with slightly less heart attacks, depending on who is pitching. So we appreciate you hopping on. We look forward to seeing you next week. And as always, chop on.